Hey guys, it's Sleepy Reader. I wanted to share some thoughts with you about some kids' comic books that I've been reading with my daughter lately. She and I read a lot on the iPad. We also read physically, but tonight I'm gonna go through some of the things we've been reading on the iPad. And all but one of these is available in physical media at the moment, and the one that isn't will soon be out there physically. Uh, what we've been looking at so far is Aw Yeah Comics, which features mostly Action Cat and Adventure Bug, although there's many other characters involved. And this has just started coming out about 4 months ago. Started with a Kickstarter thing. Here's the two guys who produced the comic book, and Art Balthazar and Franco. He just goes by Franco. Franco's the guy on the left, and Art Balthazar's on the right. Art is the artist, and I guess they're co-writers. I assume they kind of come up with gags together and the like. And they've been doing great work before Aw Yeah Comics in the Tiny Titans and the Superman Family Adventures, and they've coming out from Dark Horse. They've got Tiny, whatchamacallit, Tiny Hellboy or whatever it's called, and that should be a lot of fun too. Their comics are kind of cute, but very knowing and a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge going on, but in a light, fun way. So even when they're being self-aware, kids are kind of in on the joke for the most part. My daughter's 5 now. I think we've been reading comics by these two since she was 2.5 or 3. The Tiny Titans were an excellent way to introduce them to comics. I kind of think that these characters might be stand-ins for them because they own a comic book store called Aw Yeah Comics, and these characters work at the comic book store called Aw Yeah Comics. And they've got a bad guy named Evil Cat. Here's a kind of cute sequence where Evil Cat turns a giant pancake into a monster, but then the monster doesn't want to be a monster. The pancake just wants to dance, and that kind of shows you their sense of humor. It's a wonderful way to do superheroes for small children, and I'm convinced small children all love superheroes. They love the costumes and the powers. They just don't want all the other stuff that comes with it for older people. Um, so the more I can support comics books like this, the better. Um, and I understand they're funded for at least 12 issues. So if they continue to make money, I assume they'll make even more. Um, and I just love reading these with my daughter. And here's Awesome Bear, who turns out to be the owner of the comic book shop. Um, and there's a girl version of Action Cat who always kind of makes the boy Action Cat feel a little nervous, he has a little bit of a crush on her, I think. Another kind of cute thing is they'll do a little story about the villains. Here's Zombie Cat posing with Ghost Bug, his sidekick. This kind of shows you the level of their humor again, the dramatic action pose. So it's kind of making fun of itself or making fun of superheroes while, being in love with superheroes. Another cute character is Gravity Bear, Anti-Gravity Bear, Anti-Gravity Bear floats around like a balloon. So I highly recommend this stuff. Every issue there's a few smaller stories by other artists. I'm so into the art by Art Balthazar, it's hard to switch gears to the other artists, but still, it's interesting to see other artists do their take on this little world. Then another staple for what me and my daughter read is Adventure Time. We've read, at least 17 issues, and plus some of the miniseries. And for the most part, they're good. I think this particular issue had a very blood and guts kind of sequence that we had to skip, and it upset my daughter a bit. But we haven't come across too many of those. It does have a kind of, what do I want to say? There is a slightly disturbing side to it, but for the most part, it just goes over my daughter's head. And it's so sort of imaginative and quirky and fun, and she gets all of that. So I would still, for most kids, recommend reading Adventure Time with them. it's not quite as gentle as you might have gathered as the oh yeah comics type of thing. So, oh, and here's our favorite variation on Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake, because my daughter wants girl heroes, and Fiona is the girl version of Finn, and Cake is the cat version of Jake, a girl cat, I assume. And it's drawn in a lovely kind of storybook fashion, and even framed with kind of this creation myth, which my daughter really enjoyed, where this being of fire was the first being on Earth, and she makes these molten rock babies, and it's pretty cool. The mini-series kind of had its ups and downs. There were a few issues where it got kind of weak, but my daughter still enjoyed it. It just seemed weak to me. And then another mini-series that they've just started is Candyland Capers, starring Peppermint Butler and, what's he called? Cinnamon Bun, pardon me. And this looks pretty good, maybe not as good as the others, but still probably worth checking out. Cinnamon Bun looks a little gross, and there hasn't been anything too gross in it yet, but I do wonder if any gross out stuff is coming up. So that's the trick. My daughter, at least at her age or her sensitivity, she's deep into stories, and if something disturbing happens in them, she really feels it. So you have to tread carefully there. Here's something completely different from those, but a sort of whimsical, charming fantasy called Korgi, about these magic Korgi dogs that live with these small people with wings, although we don't find out they have wings till the end of this book, so I'm kind of spoiling it. Sorry about that. It's a wordless book, except for every issue or book, they call them books, they're about 40 or 50 pages long. Every issue begins with this introduction by this librarian frog, and then all the rest is silent, and you have to kind of figure out the story. It's very charming and fun to look at, and my daughter likes it, but it's harder on the grown-up, I would say, because you do feel, at least with someone my daughter's age, you feel obligated to kind of narrate the story to her. So it would actually have been handy to have words to read rather than make up your own story. But I imagine very soon she'll be old enough just to look at the pictures and make up her own story and be happy with that. And of course, I've set myself up that when we're reading a book, we do it together. It's not something she does alone. It's a social activity. So as you can see, it's just lovely line drawings, very, very detailed. And a lot of it kind of light and happy, but actually with scary things do happen. In this first issue, this ogre-like creature wants to eat them. But of course they escape and use their marvelous powers and stuff. And book 2, the antagonist is this alien who's crash landed on Earth or wherever we are, and is a collector, and including collecting wings off of the little winged creatures. But it doesn't seem to hurt them. They eventually get their wings back and just put them back on. So it's a little creepy, but not too, and the beauty of the pictures kind of ameliorates the scariness. In book 3, we go to the library and read an old book where we learn the origin of the Korgis, and so part of the comic is inside the old book, which has a simplified version of the drawings. And there's these evil princes who preyed upon the Korgis until the Korgis escaped. And came to live with the small winged people. You can see the evil princes in the distance. Here's the map of the world of Korgi. And there's what happened to the 2 evil princes. And I assume if a book 4 ever comes out, that these evil princes who become one 2-headed being will show up as the bad guys. Anyway, so it's very charming and, fun to look at the art for anyone of any age, and interesting stories for kids. Really good for kids is the IDW version of Wizard of Oz. which is all new, made up by Eric Schanauer stories and drawn by Eric Schanauer in an illustrative style that's very reminiscent of the illustrations in the original Oz. And it includes a Dorothy that looks like the original illustrations, a blonde girl with, kind of 1920s style of dressing. And it just takes you deep into this magical fantasy world. It's just wonderfully done. I like it much better, I'm afraid, than the Scotty Young illustrated books from Marvel. As much as I like Scotty Young, he just doesn't capture... I like this version of Oz, this very old-fashioned, feeling like you're right in the 1920s kind of feel for Oz. So I highly recommend these. We have these in digitally and in print. They're in they're collected in two inexpensive trades. I think called Little Adventures in Oz. And one or two of them is a bit scarier, and the rest are light and whimsical. But even the really scary ones, my daughter was able to handle. But they were a bit more intense. But, to me, this has been just a wonderful way to envelop my daughter in the world of Oz. A little easier. We've read some of the Oz books, but her attention usually flags after a while. But these books really keep her attention. These comic books. There's Bilna, the talking chicken, a favorite character of mine. So, and they always have a happy ending, of course. And speaking of happy endings, here's the last one I'm going to go over is Plants vs. Zombies, which is currently only out digitally on the Dark Horse Comics digital app or digital website. But I understand it's soon to come out in a 90-page hardcover collecting all 6 of these issues in one book. So each issue was 15 pages, and it's probably perfect for like a 9 or a 10-year-old, but my daughter enjoyed it a lot because she's played Plants vs. Zombies with me. And no one dies, no one gets... I mean, there's an implication here maybe that these people are going to die, but the zombies are done so silly, no one dies, no one gets hurt, except for the zombies, of course. And the drawing style is very pleasing, bright colors, so it's a fun, relatively non-scary world of zombies with the 2 children and the plants together, conquering all. So yeah, I highly recommend this either digitally or when it comes out in a book. I might buy the hard copy too. I do find my daughter likes to have the hard copy of things that we have read digitally. So it's easier to read it to her this way, but she gets a lot of pleasure out of holding the book and turning the pages. She immediately destroys what she holds and turns, but she really likes it. I'll probably occasionally do some more stuff about kids' comics. Obviously, this is just for those of you who have kids or are curious about kids' comics. So I hope you're all doing well, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.